Hello and welcome to our podcast today. My name is Andrew Farquharson.
And my name's Abi Twomlow.
And what are we talking about today, Abi?
So I thought we'd do a little session on imposter syndrome this week because there's been quite a lot in the news and media recently about it. I don't know if you saw that Adam PT, the Olympic swimmer, is taking a break from his career because of mental health. He's talking a lot about imposter syndrome at the minute and really struggling with that. And I think actually it's quite common. Mm-hmm. So I thought it'd be quite good to talk about what it is, who might experience it, and what to do about it.
That sounds good to me. But if I go quiet, it's because I'm probably experiencing imposter syndrome at that moment. I was reading the other day that it's estimated it affects about 70% of the population at some way or other. And interestingly, it's got nothing to do with your gender or your intelligence or your background. It can affect everybody,
or even age. I think it's something that we quite often associate with, adults, particularly around work. I think people associate it with a job or a work aspect, which I suppose is quite common, but actually even children suffer with it anyway. It can be absolutely anybody, regardless, like you say, of gender, age, race, background. Although I would say it is probably more common in people that have maybe got high achieving jobs or that have to stand up and talk in front of other people. I think that is quite common, but it can affect absolutely anybody. So what is it? That's the big question I suppose we should start with, isn't it? What is imposter syndrome and what does it look like? How can people recognize it?
What exactly is imposter syndrome? I mean, and what causes it? How will people recognize it?
I think on the whole, what people instantly think of is that self-doubt, that doubt in your abilities in something, whether that's a skill or a talent or how good you are at your job. It's constantly questioning being good enough and how capable you are. And I think also alongside that goes judgment from other people, worrying about whether other people think that you're good enough. So there's certainly a certain amount of social anxiety involved there. And I think in terms of doubting yourself, that's about your self-esteem and having faith in your abilities, and also having faith in your ability to cope with feeling a bit uncomfortable. Because I think a lot of people with imposter syndrome feel so uncomfortable that they avoid lots of things. So, I don't have to feel anxious about it if I don't do it, or I won't feel worried about it if I don't join the meeting or if I don't say anything, or it leads to quite a lot of avoidance. But I think in a roundabout way, it's all about your self-esteem, self-belief, and how much you worry about what other people think.
Can add to that things like, which are all akin to that, but perfectionism.
Yeah.
I've got to get it right. And as you said, I can't make a mistake.
What will everybody think if I make a fool of myself? Or especially again around work things, what will my boss think, what will my colleagues think if I say the wrong thing or if I mess it up? And it's that fear of, I suppose it's that fear of failure, isn't it, which is what perfectionism is all about. And that constant worry about making mistakes or being exposed as a fraud. I think that's quite a common feeling with imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Also, that sense of comparison with somebody else. Well, people are bound to do it better than me. They know more than I do. And it could have been one triggered by, or in the dim and distant past, by something like negative feedback or pressure from parents to perform in certain ways, or just expectation on yourself, that sense of, as we've said, perfectionism.
I think that's a lot of the time what it boils down to, but I think it's interesting where that stems from, because quite often we can't pinpoint for most people that have got imposter syndrome, it's not about, I don't think, having a past experience that's gone badly. I think it's literally just about the thoughts and beliefs that you create yourself, that belief that you're not good enough. And even when nobody said anything, so you may never have had any criticism in the past, you might have always got on fine. I think it's still easy to sort of second guess what people might think. Well, you know, they didn't say anything, or they just said it went well because they were being nice. And even when things do go quite well, I think we then attribute that to some other factor, like, well, you just got lucky, or the timing was right, or it was something else totally beyond your control that day. You know, the weather was nice and therefore it went better. We kind of blame these external things for why it went well, rather than saying I did a good job. And I think particularly Brits actually are quite uncomfortable with that, with saying that they've done a good job. You know, it went well because I've worked hard at it. I think we find that quite an uncomfortable thing. And I know with a lot of my clients, when I'm talking about self-esteem, I don't know if you find this, Andrew, but the idea of having good self-esteem is really uncomfortable for them. I think they have this idea about it meaning being arrogant or big-headed, or, you know, blowing their own trumpet about something. And that's not really what it's about. And I think because of that as well, even when something does go well, you have this tendency to go, oh, well, I should have done that better, or that could have been better, or, you know, I wish I'd done that, or if somebody else had done it, it would have been better because. So even we sort of berate ourselves, and we are our own worst enemies and our own worst critic. The chances are that everybody you were talking to or performing in front of, or whatever it is you were doing, haven't thought twice about it, or have even enjoyed it and thought it was good. But that doesn't make any difference to you if you don't have that self-belief in the first place.
You know, it's like having a really rubbish friend that's talking to you all the time. Oh,
yeah.
You know, you never do that, you're rubbish, all that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
I can't remember who it was that said, you should call that out. You should talk back to it and have your own radical hero that tells you, well, you know, you did a good job there. And even if that sense of, oh, but I could do it better next time, instead of doing it sort of in that sort of defeatist sort of way of saying, I could have done it better. So, well, next time I'll do it, I'll still do a great job, but I'm going to enhance it. I'm going to make it even better. And that has a different feel about it.
Yeah, because I think you can improve without that sort of self-sabotage, because quite often we don't pick up on any of the things that went well. We only pick up on the things that we wish we'd done better or could have been different. We don't recognize our success or even our progress. You know, even if it wasn't how you wanted it to go, it was still probably improved on the last time that you did it. Or you can still have we need to recognize the positives in what we've done and then look at how to improve, but not in a self-sabotaging or critical way, in a much more helpful and powerful way. Otherwise, we just end up working harder than we need to, just to try and prove our self-worth. and actually, that makes no difference. It doesn't matter how hard you work or how much time you put in. If you have that mindset, you're never going to feel good about it.
Challenge those thoughts. I mean, challenging the thoughts, what does that mean? Some sort of mumbo jumbo. It means actually just saying, well, actually, what's the evidence for the fact that I'm no good? I've been asked to do a talk, or I'm talking away, I've got a job, I know what I'm talking, I know how to do this, whatever it is. And that's a fact. Why is it that where's the proof that I am this imposter, all that sort of thing? I think we've talked about this in previous podcasts, is you can put that thought on trial, in a sense. I mean, the practical thing is you can do is get a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, and you have all of the facts that support the fact that you are X, Y, and Z, and you are successful, and you can do whatever it is. And on the other side, all of the facts that go with your imposter syndrome point of view. You'll find that on that side to support that imposter view of things, that most of those things are just an opinion, and an opinion is just a way of thinking. It's not a fact.
And it's an opinion about yourself as well. And actually, if you spoke to other people, would they agree with those things?
I agree with it. Yeah. Just because you've got it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
And I know there's a phrase saying we can be our own worst enemy, but in many respects, we are our most rubbish friend.
Oh, we really are. And I always say to people, if you got a friend that spoke to you the way that you speak to yourself, would you still be friends with them? Because I think the reality is that you wouldn't. There's no way you'd be friends with somebody that speaks to you like you speak to yourself. So why do we let ourselves get away with it? And that's, I suppose, mostly we never stop to think about it, really. We never question it. But the reality is you are the only person that's going to be there for you for your entire life. You're the only person that's guaranteed to be there for you your whole life. So you need to be your own best friend, not your own worst enemy.
Yeah, and it's so easy to sort of get into that state because we don't have anybody challenged. So again, if you feel yourself getting into that way of thinking, ask yourself, well, what would you say to your friend who started? Yeah. And you might say to them, well, tell me all your strengths. List them. Long list that way. You might have to cajole them a wee bit, because if they're used to putting themselves down, then they don't necessarily see their strengths. Mm-hmm. But looking at it and helping, it's a bit like, again, we've probably done this in the past, but it's a bit like having a hand in front of your face, and that's all you see.
Yeah.
And so that's what you believe is there. And when you do the things that we've talked about in the past, about other areas and today, is you're actually doing that. And then you're starting to see the world as it really is.
I think of it similar to you. I always think of it as horses with blinkers on.
All right. Yeah.
You've got a really restricted view. And I think what you pick up in that view is really biased as well. You only see the things that fit what you believe. So, you know, if you've got that belief that you're rubbish and you're not good enough, when you do a talk, you're only going to focus on that bit where you forgot your words for that split second, or, you know, you couldn't find the note that you needed. But the reality is if you open those blinkers up, there's so much that went right and so much that did go well, but you're focusing on those tiny little things because you're backing up those unhelpful beliefs about yourself. So, like you say, open that view out, look for those other things, focus on what went well, focus on your strengths. Think of it from somebody else's point of view as well. I always like that idea of elastic thinking, because it can be really difficult to compliment yourself. And actually, I think if you've got low self-esteem, or if you've got imposter syndrome, that sounds like it's some kind of disease. But if you struggle with that imposter syndrome, it can be really hard to accept compliments either from yourself or from other people. So I think learning to be a bit more accepting, it can be helpful to think about it from somebody else's point of view. It sort of takes that discomfort or that emotional side out of it. You know, what would my friend say about that? Or what would my friend tell me to think about that? Or what would my mum tell me to feel about that? So looking at it from a different perspective that's more helpful than yours can be really helpful as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, learn to be all right with compliments. If somebody said that you've done a good job, maybe they're saying it because you've done a good job, not because they're just being nice or because they're taking the mick out of you. Maybe they're saying it because they mean it.
And it can be difficult to accept a compliment for many people, especially, as you say, the low self-esteem, etc. And it isn't being arrogant, or it isn't being modest or humble or whatever. It's just, yeah, you did a good job. And the other thing that a lot of people go along with, well, it's just what I do. It's just my job.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can accept the fact that actually you do your job quite well.
Yeah.
Whatever your job is. Yeah, I do that well.
I suppose it's not always work related, is it? It might be some kind of sport, or, you know, I'm thinking about the children aspect of this. It might be some play that they've done, or music that they've played, or some kind of performance, or even just even just doing something on your own. It's not even about being on display to other people, is it? There's children, I think, coming from a teaching background in particular, children feel uncomfortable with how well they do their work, or they can't accept that they've done a good job of something. And I think part of that is the way that our society teaches them to think and behave, really. But even from a young age, kids really struggle to accept compliments. They get quite squirmy about it and a bit like, and I think that's sad, actually. It's a shame. And yeah, we need to be able to take on board that somebody's saying something nice, and it's not about being big-headed. It's about just doing a good job. Why can't you have just done a good job of something and that be fine? It doesn't say anything about you other than you've done a good job of something.
Yeah, I can find it difficult sometimes to say when somebody says, "Oh, you did well there," or something like that, pass it off and not sort of take it for what it was meant and think, I'm just doing my job. Well, actually, a nice reinforcement of the fact that you are doing your job and so on. Yeah, maybe you feel you can do something better, but there's nothing wrong in feeling that the next time you might do something differently, or you might do it better. But life isn't a script. It's something that's living, it's dynamic. And we are, in that sense, we're the authors of our own script of life. So...
And I guess look at it from the other point of view as well. How many times have you ever watched somebody give a talk or watched somebody do something and it hasn't gone 100% smoothly? You know, perhaps they stumbled over a word, or they've forgotten something. Have you laughed at them? Did you think they were an idiot? Did you say, "Oh God, they don't know what they're talking about"? Of course you didn't. You just accept that as normal. Like, it's a normal thing. It's just a human thing, even when something doesn't go to plan. And actually, most of the time, things go perfectly to plan anyway. And we very rarely judge other people in the same way that we judge ourselves, or, interestingly, the way that we think other people judge us. It's almost a bit arrogant, isn't it? We assume that everybody cares that much about us, but we don't care that much about other people when it's the other way around. So it's about looking at the reality of that. And one thing that you said earlier that I think is really important there is, what evidence have I got? What evidence have I got that people actually think that I can't do it, or that I'm not good enough? Because the answer is always none.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've just got to put it to question every time those thoughts crop up. And I also think that something that's really good to practice is to be okay with feeling a bit uncomfortable. And the best way of doing that is to set yourself, really small goals or really small challenges, I guess, but that are very, very easily achievable, like no more than a toe over your comfort zone, and learn to be a little bit uncomfortable. Because then if something does go wrong, you don't have to feel terrible about it. Or if something doesn't quite go to plan, or you forget your words, or you lose your place, or whatever it is, it's okay. You know that you can cope with that and tolerate feeling that little bit of discomfort, because that's a normal human response, and it's a normal human emotion, and it doesn't have to feel awful. It's fine to be a bit uncomfortable. You can tolerate that, you can cope with it, and nobody else is bothered about it. And I think if you can get a sense of that, then that imposter syndrome will definitely reduce, and you can maintain high self-esteem.
And that's right. Remember, actually, you're human. You're not a machine. And things move up and down and affected by whether we're tired or not, or if we're a bit under the weather, all that sort of stuff. But as you say, set yourself a little challenge, realistic little goals, little steps. As you go along, you may change direction a bit, but that's fine, because that's what happens. Just as a slight sort of tip, just say for the sake of argument, they're standing talking to somebody, and all of a sudden that sort of doubt sort of comes upon them, which is not quite right, because you're having that doubt yourself, but you feel it that way, and you're starting to feel what we've been talking about in this imposter syndrome. Is actually, if you just stay in the same position, that's going to feel worse. So move. just change, take a step sideways, move backwards, something like that. Because what you're doing then is actually you're literally changing a perspective. And you're just changing that environment. Otherwise, it can be a bit like getting like caught in the headlights of something. And the same thing actually can apply if for some reason you're sitting down at a desk and you feel you can't move, then just sort of start to rearrange things on the desk. It sort of helps to break the spell a bit.
It just readjusts your focus, doesn't it? It puts your focus on something else. And I also think if you've got something coming up that you haven't done yet, from a hypnosis point of view anyway, although it's about visualizing things going well, because actually the more you worry about getting things wrong, the more you stress about it, the more you lose sleep over it, and the more likely it is that you're going to go and do this thing feeling a high level of anxiety. You know, you're going to be sweating, your heart rate's going to increase, you're going to feel really panicky about it. And if you feel like that, things are more likely to go wrong. So plan it going really well, because that helps your body and tricks your brain into thinking that it's already happened. So if you sort of picture feeling nice and calm, even picture what happens if you do forget something or something does go slightly wrong, how you would deal with it helpfully, then your brain is more prepared for it and it's much more likely to go smoothly and you feel confident and calm beforehand. So that positive visualization, just spending a bit of time imagining whatever it is going well and planning for it to go well, and then it's much more likely to happen that way.
And actually most people are very good at visualizing, but they usually visualize things not working out in one way or another. Do very well.
It's just a habit, isn't it? It's just a habit that we're used to. I mean, we're, like you say, we're brilliant at planning the worst case scenario. And I think people do that because they have this belief that it makes them feel somehow prepared for if things go wrong. But actually it doesn't, because you can't possibly visualize all the things that might go wrong. And all that does is increase your anxiety and get you in a state about doing something. So yeah, it doesn't actually help you be any more prepared. It just makes you feel more stressed in the physical symptoms that come with that. So planning something going well, you're much more likely to feel calm and prepared than if you plan the things that might go wrong.
The other thing that a lot of people forget about anxiety in general, the more anxious we are, the more anxious we tend to become. And it's a spiral thing, but it's not only a sort of mental well-being thing. It affects us physically. And it can cause all sorts of difficulties and problems. We don't work with that. One of the ways with helping yourself over imposter syndrome, by the way, it shouldn't really be called a syndrome because it's not a sort of medical thing.
I agree.
One of the ways of getting over that is at first to acknowledge it. Yeah, I do feel a bit like that. So what am I going to do to get around it? And we've mentioned some of those bits and pieces. Another thing you can do is talk about it. Talk about it to a friend, not that rubbish friend you've got. Get rid of them. You don't need them. That one that's in your head. Tell them to pack their bags and disappear somewhere. But talk about it to some friends or professionals, to help you.
Be kind to yourself as well. Even if something does go wrong, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't make you terrible at your job or a terrible person or not very good at something. It's just that, most people make a mistake. It doesn't mean anything. And, just because you think those things as well doesn't make them true. And I think you said that earlier, but that's really important to acknowledge that. Just because that thought is there doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
So rationalize it, ask yourself for the evidence, change that thought for something helpful that makes you feel more powerful and more in control, rather than continuing to create more and more helpless and powerless thoughts, because that just leads to lots of uncomfortable feelings about it.
And I think that's actually quite a good point to end on. Summed it up quite nicely there. Do have a look at some of our other podcasts, but remember, you're human, I'm human, sometimes. But we'll see you soon. So thanks very much. Okay,
Yeah,
bye-bye.
bye. Take care.